Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 31 of Blue Leadership with your host, Dennis Nayer. Dennis is a 26-year law enforcement veteran and retired chief from the state of New York. He's also a proud graduate of the 240th session of the FBI National Academy and the 61st session of the FBI LEA Command Institute. The Blue Leadership video podcast is brought to you by the nationally ranked Master of Science in Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership program at the University of San Diego. You can learn more about the LEPSL program at criminaljustice.sandiego.edu.
Maddie, thanks for that intro. So right now we're here with Chief Tom Worthy. The chief is in charge and leads the Dalles, Oregon Police Department. Prior to that, he spent 29 years with the Oregon State Police, finishes up his career there as a major. Did a lot of things there, which we're going to cover some of them in this podcast. About the chief is he has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Washington State University, is a proud graduate of the MS LEPSL, the Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership degree, the master's degree from the University of San Diego. He's a graduate of a series of other executive schools, and he gets to put all of that to use in his current role. So without further ado, Chief, thanks for being here today.
Dennis, it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. I'm so glad to be able to take this time to talk contemporary topics in law enforcement leadership and get your insights and share some of my own on what's happening in the state of policing today in America. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. And actually, I'd be remiss if I didn't get in there and graduate of session 261 of the FBI's National Academy, which is top in terms of leadership. And what I want to talk about is when we talk leadership, a lot of that is to be able to lead an agency, you also need the support of the community. And you have achieved that in a very positive way in your city. And I was just hoping you could talk a little bit about how you receive the community support that you currently have.
Yeah, we have, and I think that's an important topic, and it's an intentional day-to-day activity here at the City of the Dalles Police Department. This police department's been here since Lewis and Clark camped here back in the discovery of America. They have a campsite on the edge of the river here in town, and it's been established ever since. The city started out with the Marshal Service and came into a police department later, and so we have a long history. And the town has been stable. There's not a lot of growth. There's a little bit, but many of these families go back for generations, and they remember things that occurred on and around the police department years ago. And so any failure that the police department's had in the past where things either weren't handled correctly or personnel did the wrong thing for the wrong reason is remembered, and rebuilding that community trust and letting them know that today this police department is committed to transparency. We'll tell them as much as we possibly can about incidents and goings on within the police department and events that occur within the town as we possibly can under the law. And when we make mistakes, we own it. And every community event that I go to, and every time I speak to the Lions Club or any other civic club, I tell them this police department is entirely constructed of human beings, and we are not perfect, but we do strive to do the best that we can. And when we make a mistake, we'll own it, we'll repair it, and we'll make sure it doesn't happen again to the best of our ability and move forward. So building that community trust is paramount in everything we do. It's front and center to all of our conversations with the community, and we want to be accessible. One of the things about police departments oftentimes is we're in secure facilities behind doors, and there's good reasons for that. But having an open door policy for the community, hey, come and talk to us, come in and tell us what's going on, tell us what we did well, tell us what you'd like to see better, what are your concerns within the community. One of the tips that I picked up from a classmate in the LEPSL program was a community open house. And so every week, 2 hours of my time are assigned to office hours, essentially, where anybody can come in and talk about anything. And we get people talking about retail theft, and we get people talking about, of course, homelessness, and we get people asking about neighborhood watch programs. And it's my time is available to them, and I might not be able to do anything about their concern, but I'm certainly willing to listen and to listen to their ideas. And it's a little lab where we can work on the safety of the community together and talk about what's working, what do they want to see, and just have that community and be available to them. They just want to be able to come in, get your ear, and know that they've been heard. And then we'll take whatever steps we can to address their problems and concerns. So that's the direction that we're angling towards is raising that trust within the community, raising our accessibility, and being there to meet our community where they need and for what they want and what their concerns are. So very important, and it's a priority under my administration here.
It definitely comes across that way, and a lot to unpack with that, but really that honest, transparent approachability and the human-centric focus, I think, is huge. And I'm sure your officers appreciate that as much as the community, because again, without community support, you could have all the tools, you can have all the money in the budget, but if you don't have the community support, everything falls flat.
Yeah, and those two things are connected because the community support drives that budget. They drive the budget committee, they drive the city council. And if we're not supported by the community, we're not going to be able to go and say, hey, we want to start a drone program, or hey, we need these more patrol cars or a new gen taser or whatever the case is. And I'm committed to my people here within the police department that they will work with the best tools available, the best, most modern tools to help them do their job to the very best of their ability for our community. And without that community support, we're not going to have those things. There are a lot of needs. Like I said, it's an old town. The water infrastructure needs support. The sidewalks need to be repaired. The streets need to be repaired. All of those things are important for the community. But without public safety, nobody's going to want to live here. If this town becomes unsafe and people feel unsecure here, they're not going to want to live in a town where the houses were built in the early 1900s and none of them have garages. All of their cars are parked on the streets where they're non-secured overnight. Car break-ins are a concern. Theft from residences, package theft, all of these things that we see in every other community exist here in the Dalles, and we want to be supported. And for me to have the community support to give my people the right tools to do their job makes my people want to continue to work here. As the transfer portal is open in policing, if you are a police officer in good standing, you can go to work anywhere. The city of Portland and the whole metro area, Gresham, Tigard, Hillsborough, Beaverton, Vancouver, they are an hour away from here. And any of my people could really live here and commute to those jobs if they wanted to, where they pay more, they work with modern equipment. We have to stay competitive. We have to continue to use that equipment. And the driver for that, again, is that community support. So everything ties together. As you can see, one little pull on a thread here or there can affect the whole operation.
I should give the kudos to you because you are going there with a strong technology background from your time with the Oregon State Police. And when you went in there, you had three main goals. And we're going to talk about all the, one of them was to become accredited. We're going to cover that, about building community relations to the best degree possible, and about technology. And so I think the community and the department is very lucky that you're in there in that role with that background.
So those were my three priorities coming in. I came in with a written plan. There were other things as well, including to ensure fairness in the promotional process, ensure fairness in the assignment of special assignments on the department, and a number of other things. But to come back to those three priorities, yes, become accredited was a number one thing for me. We weren't accredited, never had been. The sheriff's department here is not. Our neighboring agencies are not. And I really saw that as an opportunity to plant our flag and say, we adhere to the best practices in law enforcement. We are willing to prove that to our community, go through that pain, go through that process, and have outside experts come in and affirm or deny our adherence to those principles. And luckily, we came out with a very clean report. We had done it right. I did receive support through a grant through the federal cops office. I'd never written a grant before, but I thought, hey, how hard can it be? I've done other things, sat down, wrote out a grant, and it was awarded to bring in some support to do that. But again, the first agency in the region to be accredited. And I think that the reasons really speak for themselves. That ability to uplift our operations. We rewrote every policy, had an addition or a subtraction to it or an update to it. We brought our evidence manual up to current status, incorporated it into our policy manual. So we had one manual to maintain and support rather than two. To be honest, our evidence manual was not in a place where it should be. It was clearly borrowed from somebody else. Now it's our own, and it meets our needs. So that accreditation process with the support of the federal cops office took a long time. And my sales pitch to the department when we undertook that was, hey, I've done hard things before. I always liken it to climbing a ladder that goes up into the clouds. You can't see where it leads, but if you take it one rung at a time, pretty soon you'll pop through and you'll be at the top. And that's what we did. It did take longer than I anticipated. A lot of that did surround the grant funding and reporting on the grant, which I, again, had never done before, but it did support us in that. And we came out with a very clean report. And coming back to that community transparency, we've posted our accreditation report from the Northwest Accreditation Alliance on our website. Anybody can go take a look at it. If anybody is curious to do that, please do. It'll tell you a lot about our department, and it tells you where we're strong and where we can continue to work.
As someone who led an agency did the same thing, that we were not accredited in my first agency, and I said will become accredited for those same exact reasons. And it was one of the moments of the most pride in achieving that status, because exactly like you said, it shows you meet or exceed the best practices for policing. You're constantly reviewing your policies in the most critical areas of evidence control, use of force, all these areas, vehicle pursuits, foot pursuits, everything. When you are accredited, it means that you're doing it the best way possible. And will things always go right? Obviously, the answer is no, but you have the best odds in your favor of making it happen.
That's absolutely right, Dennis. And I actually took it one step further. The Accreditation Alliance, the Northwest Accreditation Alliance, was looking for board members. And so I volunteered for that. And I got myself into the system, and it helped further my understanding of what it was about and what it meant to be accredited and how that operation occurs in terms of the assessments, the proofs of compliance. And so now I'm on the board of directors for the Northwest Accreditation Alliance, and I'll put in a plug for them expanding into Alaska rapidly. Alaska has no native state accreditation alliance. Northwest Accreditation Alliance is there to support them, and have brought in a chief from Alaska on the board now too. So excellent organization, really doing it at a very affordable cost. It's a grassroots coalition of industry experts from the Northwest who are teaming up to make sure that we all are uplifted. And so I'm proud to be a small part of that organization as well.
Yeah, and an interesting ancillary component to that is, so the course I'm teaching currently, the contemporary issues course for LEPSL, is that risk management and problems lying in wait, and really being able to address things before they're a problem. And then accreditation is just an amazing tool for that, because it's just setting the stage in a positive way for the things that are the high liability areas and the things that will get officers hurt or sued or lose trust. And when you're accredited, you're really doing a lot of really good risk management.
I got a telephone call from our law enforcement relations expert at City County Insurance, who insures the city here, City of the Dalles. And he said, hey, I'd like to come in and do a law enforcement assessment on City of the Dalles Police Department. We just completed accreditation. I said, please come on in. We're ready for you now. And it's on the calendar. We're ready to go. It's one of those things where, had we not gone through that accreditation process, it might have been concerning, but right now I feel in a very strong position to do that, and we're ready to go. So you're right. It's an important process. It's a lot of work, and I've heard the people who don't choose to undergo it have reasons that to them seem valid. It's either cost, or why do we have to, or what's the need for us. And I think that as you go through the process, all of those things are revealed to you. And I would really like to see our partners in the area engage and go through that process. And of course, as a partner in the region, we would be there to support them in any way that they needed, even if it was just advice or what to expect, or sharing what we use for proofs for any of the numerous standards that we went through would be just fine too. Everybody has their own approach to it, and I'm not saying everybody has to. For us, it was the right decision. I'm proud of what we accomplished, and we're going to definitely continue to maintain that. It's a 3-year cycle for assessment, and we'll be ready in the next 3 years.
I'll close with, on the accreditation part, is that, yeah, it is a bit of work at the beginning because there's a lot to do. But once you do it and you just maintain it, the hard work has been done. And it actually makes the job of policing from a leadership, administrative perspective and a patrol perspective and everything in between actually easier, because things are done correctly, efficiently. And again, like borrowing the line from risk management expert Gordon Graham, if it's predictable, it's preventable. And that accreditation allows you to prevent a lot of things that otherwise could go wrong.
That's right. That's right. And the famous Gordon Graham quote, and I'll take that one step further and say that every member of our police department is a risk manager. And so I love to look at every call that they go to and say, hey, what's the risk here to our organization, to our community, and to the people that we serve, and start asking themselves, is it worth it? And that's what it comes down to.
And it comes full circle. There's the trust again. And what I want to ask, Chief, so now you came in from the outside. Can you just share a little bit with the listeners and viewers coming in from the outside? You came in from a large agency to a smaller agency. It's a challenge if you do it the opposite way or you do that way. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition experience? And then also, you have that MS LEPSL degree, which is an amazing asset. Did that help in the transition?
Just I'll put it right out there on Front Street. Lepsel absolutely helped. Everything that I learned was immediately applicable to my new position. I think it really took my understanding of community policing and really just the state of law enforcement itself to that next level. Absolutely. I encourage anybody that's thinking about a master's degree in law enforcement to engage with the University of San Diego and pursue it through the Lepsel program. I want to tell you that I did my Lepsel work while working full time. And that was during the riots and it was during COVID. And so if there was any combination of difficulties that could have made it unachievable, I had it and I lived through it and we're stronger for it. And the Lepsel program was understanding and accommodating for all of that stuff. And we survived. And that's one of the things that made me think that we could go through the accreditation process. Hey, difficult things have happened in the past. And guess what? Keep showing up, keep working, and you can make it through all that stuff. So, yeah, to come back to the idea of transitioning to a smaller agency from the state police, Oregon State Police, the largest agency in the state by far, pretty close to Portland Police Bureau. But for Oregon, it's mostly a bunch of medium and small size agencies. And so my transition in here was actually aided by the fact that I was a trooper assigned to the Dallas Barracks way back 25 years ago for 5 years. And so I had some familiarity with the town. I still had some familiarity with some of the police officers here in the department, some of the ones that have been here for a while, and even community members who I'll bump into at the gas station or at the grocery store, and they say, "Hey, I knew you back in the day." And there's a lot of water under the bridge between those days and today. But I did have that going for me, and it was a little bit like coming home to me in that I was familiar with the community. I'd engaged with the community here as a trooper, and I knew my way around, and I knew who some of the players were in the local community. So I think that helped. But also, it was coming on the heels of the Portland riots, which I was involved in, and it was coming on the heels of COVID. We're still coming out of that and dealing with some of those impacts. So there were challenges there to address. And I think the only way to meet that stuff is head on and to roll up your sleeves, come in with a plan, and get to work on day one, which is what I really tried to do. And moving forward to build on success, early success and momentum to really keep the department moving in a positive direction and snowball on little successes. Any little thing that you can celebrate, let's get it out there. We can engage with our community, much of them on Facebook, just by a simple post. We're active on social media, and we try and be as transparent as possible to let people know what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why we're doing what we're doing.
A couple of things you said really resonated, the relevance and the applicability of the master's program that actually you and I both went through. And actually, I was the chief in my second agency during those same times. COVID, protracted months and months of civil unrest, lots and lots of challenges, spikes in crime. And yeah, so it was work, but it was work that was well worth it. And what I wanted to circle back to is, so the time of the unrest, so you're with the Oregon State Police and you had members of your agency go help out in Portland. Can you just share a little bit about what that was like and how many rotations went through and how long that occurred?
Yeah, we were in Portland for months on end. And I just want to make it clear that I was a part of a big machine that occurred up there. We had tons of federal partners. We had many members of our state police organization up there doing either working in the command post or working in the field or supporting field operations in some way. Everybody from dispatch to IT, you name it, were there helping and supporting. And we were there in support of Portland Police, and we were the last ones that remained as other partner agencies due to political climate and concerns about officer wellness and safety and risk in terms of even prosecutions and stuff like that, started to bail out. We were the last ones remaining because we're obviously an executive branch agency, and under the orders of the governor, we were going to be there in support. And ultimately, at the end of those riots, and let's just call it what they were riots. I saw them every single night, and I saw our people getting injured, and I saw the damage to our equipment and our community. Our people were drained. We were understaffed for the mission. Portland was understaffed for the mission in all reality, and it was difficult times. And of everything that I've experienced in my career, it's a little like the preamble to A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times because it was all of those things simultaneously. And as I sat in the command center after the evening briefing, which we fell into this pattern, this come in, brief, grab something to eat, get settled in, wait for generally have some sort of a public speaker or event or somebody on a bullhorn, and then it would devolve into criminality, criminal acts, property damage, assaults, be waiting for that to occur. And I'd literally be logged into my Lapsel homepage, writing a paper. And then all of a sudden you'd hear somebody, hey, we got something going off at 3rd and Salmon. Log out of one, log into the other, get operational on it. That was bizarre. I look back at it and I think, like, how did that even happen? What were we thinking in that moment? And the community was not really receiving the true story of what I witnessed with my own eyes on the ground. It was reported in a very odd way where you would see fires and things being thrown at officers on a skirmish line, and a reporter would be saying, live from downtown at a small protest. And you're like, how can that be the story? That's not the story. The story is there's violence in our streets. The story is there's property damage and that people are behaving in a completely unacceptable manner. And I'll tell you right now that Portland Police and the Oregon State Police and all of the other allied agencies down there firmly supported their right to protest. And had they protested, made their point, and gone home, none of this would have made news and we wouldn't remember any of it. But that's not what occurred. When people show up dressed in all black, balaclavas, and gas masks, and carrying black backpacks that are full of rocks and frozen water bottles and every other kind of thing to throw, paint bombs, paintballs, to shoot at us and throw in our direction. And then the arson was completely unacceptable. So many times that they were trying to burn down the Portland police facilities. It was traumatic. It was not right. And I really think that the police, for any shortcomings that we might have had, stopped the community from burning down to the ground. And so I'm proud to be a part of it. I was the operational commander for my time there for the OSP portion of it. And we worked closely with our partners. It was the biggest ramp up of law enforcement assets that I've seen in my life. There were federal agencies there here's a good example. Border Patrol Tactical Team was there. We're nowhere near the border. We're nowhere near the border. But the federal government was throwing resources at the problem to protect their federal courthouse downtown, which was completely fenced off. People say it got graffitied. It didn't get graffitied. It got repainted. That thing all the way, I don't even know how they got so high up the side of the building. It was completely repainted in anti-police rhetoric that was just frankly untrue. George Floyd memorials and you name it, all over the place. And it was crazy, weird times. And it also, we really saw a coming together of our officers with Portland Police Bureau. We'd always had a separate mission or a separate role. And now they're Oregon State troopers and they're working downtown to fight the fentanyl crisis. And we have a greater handshake with that organization. And as a part of that, I think that's one good thing that came out of it was a greater collaboration between those organizations for public safety in Oregon.
Yeah, and it's an amazing amount of experience that you now have brought to a small community. And I think another lesson learned is, like, you realize more so than anyone could imagine the value of having that community trust and building that trust before there's an issue, because you need that. And it's not my term, but I've heard it termed a reservoir of trust. And that reservoir is huge. And hopefully you don't ever need to dip into it. But what you're doing with building 21st century policing principles and trust and accountability and that approachability, I think you're doing exactly what needs to be done in building that reservoir. And like I said, I hope you never need to touch it, but it looks like you're doing everything to build it.
Dennis, you really hit the nail on the head right there. And also, as another lesson for myself coming out of the Portland 2020 riots, was the need for us to collaborate with our partners. And that resonates for me here as well, because now that we're a smaller agency and we've got a sheriff's department, we've got allied agencies just down the road, we have to work together. If we have a major event, we are going to be calling on our partners. We'll be calling on the trooper barracks here in town and asking them to come out and help, because we're staffed to handle just about one emergency. And if we have two emergencies, or if we have one really large emergency, we're going to be quickly overwhelmed. And those relationships and who's in my cell phone contact list really matters. I think reaching out and building those relationships with other law enforcement agencies, as well as our partners in the schools. And I mentioned it's -4 degrees outside right now. We have social service workers that are aligned with us, and shelters, and all of those other community engaged partners that we have to do our job. Just so critical, especially in a relatively small town like this, that we all work together. And I would say it's like rowing the boat in the same direction. All it really takes is one person rowing in the opposite direction and your boat's not going to go straight.
Everything you're saying is exactly the philosophies to which I subscribed, and that's saying specifically as well. And what's interesting is I never understood why certain agencies don't get along with one another, because in the end, we all need to work together, whether it's police agencies or police and social service agencies, police and fire, whatever, when there's a crisis or an emergency, we don't have time for squabbles or bickering. We need to be on the same page and we need to be aligned for the common good. And yet again, that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, we have to answer the call together. And again, I see as a risk here in our local community that we could be overwhelmed. If we had one of those events of national significance, be it a school shooting or some sort of a bombing or even a natural disaster, there's a giant hydroelectric dam in the river out here. If it had a mechanical failure that caused a giant flood, there's a slide zone in town. If that let loose somehow and wiped out 50 houses, we're really going to need those partners. And so it's important for us to, ahead of time, establish those relationships and know that we can work together and what our emergency plans are. A part of that, maybe to lead us into the next conversation, would be how we can interact via radios, via computers, technologically, how we analyze our crime trends and really uplift the technology of the department.
Yeah, so there it is. The intelligence-led policing, using that technology and leveraging those resources. And it seems like it's creating a very high-quality product. And actually, this leads me into the next component I wanted to ask you. Everywhere across the nation, recruitment and retention, big issues. You're not having that issue. So you're doing some things incredibly well because a lot of agencies can't boast that they have the staffing where they need it to be or that they can draw in the people. Can you just share what you're doing and how you're getting to where you need to be?
Absolutely. So we want to make sure that we can move quickly when a good candidate comes around, because again, like I said, these people can go to work anywhere. There are agencies within an hour's drive of us that are offering humongous bonuses to sign on as a police officer, either as a lateral or even an entry level officer. So we have to compete for those people, and we have to let them know that, hey, this is a place where you're wanted. This is a place where you can succeed and exceed your goals and have a career that is meaningful. And one of the things that's special about the city of the Dalles is how much this community needs us. If we weren't here for a day, you might not notice it. If we weren't here for a week, you would begin to immediately notice it in the quality of life in our community. So if you want to work somewhere where you can be affirmed, you can have a say in how the operations go, and you'll be heard, and you can bring your own individual talents, skills, and abilities to bear on our crime problems in this community and beyond, this is a place for you, where we are family friendly. And because we say that, we have to live it, Dennis. And so if you walk into my office, you might see somebody's 6-year-old sitting up with the secretaries or chasing our cat around the office. You might see us with a dog in the squad room because somebody just didn't want to leave Fido home for the day. And that's fine. So if we're going to say we're family friendly, we have to live that value. And we do here. And it's actually one of the nicest things about being here is we know each other's families. We see each other socially in the community. We see each other's children around the office. If school's closed for a day, there's going to be kids in the office. I can tell you that right now. Now, of course, we make sure that those kids are safe and all of our appropriate safety protocols are in place. Our cars are locked, our guns are locked up or on our hip, all of that type of thing. But to see a child here coloring in the front office is not that unusual. So we live that value, and we want to make it a place where people choose to come to work. We do have a very important distinction against the rest of the state is that the city of the Dalles has its own retirement system. Almost every other agency in the state is in PERS or public employee retirement system, and we are not. And the city of the Dalles retirement plan is generous. And so we try and use that as a selling point that, hey, even though your wages are going to be essentially pretty level with our competitors in the area, we're well paid, compensated. But your retirement plan, where you might get 8% in PERS, the city's putting in 22%. So it's a distinction that you have to have a long range vision to realize. But once you get that through to people, hey, you're going to have all of the benefits. You're going to have this retirement account that will be yours. I think we can make the case for people to come here, for people to succeed here. And we're going to provide them with the tools, training, and equipment, the policies, the procedures, and the leadership for them to be successful in this career. And we invest in them. And we don't want them to fail. Their failure is our failure. If somebody comes in here, engages in our field training process and does not succeed, then we go back and look at what happened. Why didn't they? What could we have done to make this person successful? As it's a big investment to get somebody onboarded. And once they're here, we want to give them every single opportunity to succeed and recognize that there is more than one right way to do this job. Maybe their approach wasn't your approach, but did it get us to the right outcome? And if so, that might be acceptable for us.
That introspection and ownership, yet again, another clear distinction of leadership on your part, Chief. And I feel that this podcast can be embedded within your recruiting section somewhere, because anyone listening to it speaks very highly as to why someone should work for you.
I would like it if they would.
Yeah. As our time's winding down, Chief, what I'd like to always finish with is, can you share if there's a leadership book, a podcast, or a philosophy to which you subscribe? You're clearly, just in our talking, you can tell that you're passionate about what you do. You have the knowledge. You have the desire to want to build the best department possible. Can you just share with the listeners and viewers any of that book, podcast, or philosophy that you think is helpful?
Yeah, I read a book called It's Your Ship. You might be familiar with it. It's written by a gentleman named Abramson, and he was a Navy commander who took over a relatively low performing ship in the U.S. Navy, and he turned it into one of the higher performing ships in the Navy. And I always find a really good parallel between law enforcement and the military in terms of mission and our values and being driven to achieve and succeed. And he did that by empowering his people and really listening to them and being open to new ideas. And I think that's really what it distills down to is clarity of mission. Like, my people here need to clearly understand their nexus, their personal nexus, the community safety within the Dalles. If they understand that every day they can make a choice to go out and write their reports in the field, or they can come back to the office and not be available to the community. They can go out and proactively patrol our alleyways, open areas, homeless camps, you name it, or you can go sit in a parking lot. And as long as they understand that the more active they are, the more engaged they are, the more contacts that they make, the safer our community is. And there's an awful big opportunity here to make positive contacts within our community. People really appreciate it if you stop in and say, hey, how's everything going? Do you feel safe? Are you having any problems? And they might initially say, no problem. But if you stand there for 5 minutes, they'll start telling you, oh yeah, by the way, the house 2 doors down, I think we have a problem. Oh, really? Tell me about it. So investing that time and that communication, and that's what they did in that Navy ship. And they really looked for innovative ways to be accountable to the mission, understand exactly what it is that they're supposed to do, communicate that to the employees, and then drive that ship towards that ultimate goal. And that's what we're really trying to do here, is through clarity of mission and the ability to, dare I say, think outside the box. But that really just means being open to new ideas and embracing that philosophy of community policing. Dennis, like, I can't leave here without telling you that is an number one priority of mine. And so people bat that term around a little bit, and sometimes it's difficult for them to actually define what that means. And I'll tell you, that can be the case, but when you hear a call dispatched and the description comes out from the dispatcher and your officer saying, oh, that sounds like Bill, that sounds like John, that sounds like Pat, and they're knowing the people who are in the community that are out there doing crimes, that's a key indicator. When I hear my patrol sergeant come up on the radio and go, hey, just for information, there's a lemonade stand on 3rd and Pentland, and somebody comes around and you hear your officers checking out there and buying lemonade, that is community policing. So you really know, and there'll be signs when you can tell that your people have bought in and that they're out there doing that job and hustling within the community, making those connections. So I said 3rd and Pentland. That was probably a horrible example for me, because that's one of our problematic locations. But, up in the neighborhoods and out there engaging with the community. And that's really what I want to see.
Chief, amazing. I could talk at length for quite a bit more time on this. Maddie's going to come in and close us out, but I really think that's a great way to end it. And it really connects way back to that Peelian principle. The police are the public or the police. Your officers and your staff, they know the community they serve. The community's knowing them. I love the part about going to the lemonade stand. That's, to me, those gold nuggets of policing, when you can show up and people are happy to see you. And thanks for your philosophy. Thanks for your leadership and what you're doing. And I am sure the listeners and viewers are going to get a lot out of this podcast.
Dennis, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much to Dennis and Chief Worthy. We appreciate your time today. And to our viewers, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to meet the law enforcement heroes and leaders who are part of the MS Lepsel family. If you would like to watch previous episodes of Blue Leadership, you can find them on the video tab of our Facebook page or by searching USD Blue Leadership on YouTube. Thanks, everyone. We will see you next time.